Welcome to TradeTheMBA.com. This is John. This report is for the 26th of January. And, well, like we've talked about, when there are these kinds of declines, you're going to get sharp bounce backs. And we look to the readings to see if they're going to be sustainable. And clearly with the white leading, which we haven't seen in quite some time, since well back over here when we had the last decline back in September or October, and then pretty much it's been hidden until we just have these little brief dips. But whenever they appear, they're pretty convincing. In this particular case right now, that we got red leading on the spike back. So again, you're going to get these fits and bursts of buying in that, but what happens is you end up making lower highs. And if you make lower lows and it's consistent, in this particular case, we dropped back down another 100 points and it got all bought back up. Just actually it was pretty close to even on the day, and then literally right as the close was happening, dipped back down below the 23%. So that's currently where you see after hours is took another pretty significant drop down to 43.08 and literally shot right back up. It was almost an instantaneous kind of move. It was very interesting to see that happening in after hours. We'll see if it's able to maintain itself. You can see it again here from an NQ standpoint. So despite these rallies, still pretty weak with that white leading. NQ though has magenta over yellow. What I'm looking forward to, and key to point out, is the DOC with the orange. A pivot back up would signal a drop in the market is pretty imminent. As it continues to dip down, though, that becomes a little bit more bullish. In fact, if I put up the ES, you can see similar setup here, all the way at minus 12. So that's got some little bit of bullishness built into it. Obviously, you've got to have rising red and the damage that's been done with the shakeout that is going to take a little bit to recover from. So at best, you're going to get moves to the 23% and a little bit of sideways action from there. Worst case is that orange begins to pivot and we're looking at new lows in that particular case. Nothing taking place with the euro. Sort of irrelevant. Gold's going to continue its climb. It's already almost back up. This was more than expected. We're seeing very little activity on the inflation front, and with oil continuing to be at the highs, not great as far as any relief. And you can see, as we talked about, once there was some calm and people started popping back into the market, rates continuing to rise, going back up, and we would expect that to continue dropping, indicating rising rate environment. Bitcoin in that held up pretty well. I mean, when you talk about, though, given where it's come from in the 64 plus range down to that algo level at 34, it's fought to hold above that now for better part of the day. Really didn't see much of the action that was taking place when ES was making all of its moves. So held up pretty decent in that. And Ethereum, not as much action. It was significantly less volume than we've seen in the past days. So crypto's kind of like mellowed out after everyone sort of like moved out of that crazed space and back to a much more orderly configuration within those setups. And from a 50K standpoint, you see the weakness built up, caused a little pop back above here once magenta got back above, and then once it broke back down below that 25, which gave us those little magenta dots, and also right at the algo level here at the 43.51 range from previous run, and pretty much in line with expectations within that. It was a nice brief little dip. 5K action. And when we look at that 5K, we start off with the pre-market that just was straight lower and began to produce a few little pops, but every one of them, they were already starting out with positive extremes. So the return back to those areas pretty well expected, and every time we got any little attempt at a move that started to go, at least building, I mean, these were decent readings right here within it, and did pop to the 50%, but immediately broke down, and that led to the new lows. And it was quite interesting because having built up as far as price did, and then again just collapsed back down only to skyrocket back up in post-market. There's a lot of rotation, a lot of volume related to this, because you can see I keep scrolling across here. The paint's captured most things quite beautifully as we start to get little turnarounds. The fades, all pretty clean. Sliding as we get, but then it was that same later part of the day, pretty close to the exact same time period, and sure enough, this skyrocket, and it was just that relentless boom, 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 buy. The only difference was this time, unlike the day before, it sort of stopped, and once it did, there were plenty of sellers to fill back in. And there was just a lot of positive extremes, some of them a little more broken and erratic, but going back to previous algo levels here, and then we only had a single one at the previous algo of the 43, so just a bunch of series a little higher, then all just filled right back in, and then we had white MBI lead most of that. And this sort of turned around as the market closed, kind of this big drawdown right after the 4 p.m. I have to go back to about there. And it just like trailed off dramatically, but then immediately the post-market was brought right back to the same spot, which gave it the impression of already being up. And then here in the Euro session, continuing to drive higher already and posting pretty good numbers. I mean, you're back at 44.10. My whole point exactly that a whole lot of drama for not really a whole lot of actual things happening. So, as always, though, continue to update you. Made a lot of changes within the 50K programs and that, so it'll be exciting to get all of those details out. As always, trade well. We'll talk to you later.